It's January 24th, and the strange side of history awaits. Today, we have a man frozen in a war that never really ended for him. Radioactive debris falls silently from the sky, and a discovery that drove thousands west. Let's begin. On January 24th, 1972, deep in the jungles of Guam, where trees choked out the sunlight and the war had ended decades earlier, a ghost stepped back from history. Local hunters spotted a figure moving silently through the undergrowth. 56-year-old Soichi Yokoi, a former Imperial Japanese Army sergeant. For nearly 28 years, he had been hiding from a war that was long over. When U.S. forces retook Guam in 1944, Yokoi fled into the jungle, convinced surrender was worse than death. He carved out a bamboo-lined cave beneath the earth and survived on rats, toads, river eels, and coconuts, living like a shadow beneath the soil. Leaflets claiming that the war had ended reached him by 1952, but he dismissed them as enemy lies. When he finally returned to Japan, he didn't celebrate survival. Instead, he bowed his head and said, "It is with much embarrassment that I return." His story wasn't just about endurance, it was about how war can trap a mind long after the fighting stopped. The world moved on, but he stayed behind, waiting for a different ending that never came. On January 24th, 1978, the skies over northern Canada ignited. Just before dawn, residents watched a blazing fireball tear across the atmosphere. What they were witnessing wasn't a meteor. It was Cosmos 954, a Soviet nuclear-powered spy satellite falling back to Earth out of control. The satellite had been launched months earlier, carrying a small nuclear reactor meant to be ejected safely into space at the end of the mission. That system failed, and at 6:53 a.m., the machine broke apart over Queen Charlotte Islands, scattering radioactive debris across more than 600 kilometers of wilderness. At first, Soviet officials claimed it had burned up completely, but it hadn't. The highly radioactive fragments rained down across the Northwest Territories, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, silently contaminating forests, rivers, and indigenous hunting grounds. Some pieces emitted radiation strong enough to be lethal within hours. A secretive joint mission called Operation Morning Light began sweeping the frozen terrain. Search teams found radioactive debris near Great Slave Lake, recovering only a fraction of the nuclear fuel. The rest was never found. For months, northern communities lived with an invisible threat beneath the snow. The Cold War didn't always fall with explosives. Sometimes it drifted down quietly from the sky. On January 24th, 1848, at the edge of the quiet river of the foothills of California, a carpenter named James W. Marshall noticed something glinting near Sutter's mill. Tiny gold flakes, no bigger than seeds, and in that moment, history cracked open. Marshall and the landowner, John Sutter, tried to keep the discovery a secret, but gold has this way of whispering, and soon, those whispers became a roar. Within a year, nearly 300,000 people, later called the 49ers, flooded California across the world. Towns sprang up overnight, laws vanished, and obsession took over. California transformed remote territory into a U.S. state almost overnight. Fortunes fueled rises of empires like Wells Fargo and Levi Strauss, but the gold demanded a price. John Sutter lost everything, his land overrun, his livestock stolen, and his life's work destroyed. Marshall, the man who found the gold, died penniless. Native communities were devastated, their populace collapsing under violence and disease. Mining camps became brutal and lawless places where many people vanished without a trace. For every fortune made, countless lives were erased, swallowed by greed and forgotten by history. Another day, another strange bite from history. Like, comment, and subscribe. Your next eerie dose is just a day away.